Everyone thinks Mike is some kind of hero for what he did to me. They think he's this wronged husband who got his justice against the cheating wife. But nobody knows what really happened in our marriage. How he pushed me into the arms of other men with his suffocating control and emotional absence. Now I'm a single mother, living paycheck to paycheck while he plays happy family with his new wife, and everyone acts like I deserved to have my entire life destroyed. I'm Sarah, and 5 years ago my ex-husband orchestrated the complete destruction of my life because I dared to seek happiness outside our dead marriage. He wants everyone to think he was the victim, but the truth is much more complicated than his revenge fantasy version. Mike and I met in college. He was studying waste management, yes, garbage, while I was getting my marketing degree. He wasn't my usual type. I dated athletes, musicians, guys with ambition and dreams. Mike's biggest dream was a steady paycheck and a pension. But after a string of bad boys who left me heartbroken, Mike's stability seemed attractive. There was Derek, the drummer who wrote me love songs but also cheated with every groupie who looked his way. Marcus, the basketball player who was going pro until he blew out his knee and blamed me for jinxing him. Trevor, the entrepreneur who turned out to be selling fake IDs and got arrested during our 6-month anniversary dinner. So when my roommate introduced me to Mike at a campus mixer, his boring stability seemed like a relief. He showed up when he said he would. He called when he promised. He had a 5-year plan that didn't involve jail time or rehab. "He's so reliable," my roommate said when I started dating him, "like a Toyota Camry." That should have been my first warning. Who wants to be married to a Toyota Camry? But I was 22 and thought I wanted safe. I thought I wanted predictable. I thought passion was overrated. My friends were skeptical. "He collects garbage?" they'd ask, noses wrinkling. I'd defend him, say he was studying municipal management, that it was a stable career with good benefits. But even then, I was embarrassed. My sorority sisters were dating future lawyers and doctors. I was dating a future garbage man. But Mike was persistent in that plodding way of his. He'd show up with flowers from the grocery store, take me to chain restaurants, plan dates weeks in advance. It wasn't romantic, but it was consistent. After years of chaos, consistent felt like love. Our early years were okay. Not great, not terrible, just okay. Mike worked his city job, coming home smelling like garbage and sweat. I'd started at a marketing agency, working with creative people, going to launches and networking events. We lived in different worlds that only intersected in our small duplex. The sex was mechanical from the start. Mike had one move. Missionary position, 10 minutes max, same routine every time. When I suggested trying new things, he'd get this uncomfortable look and change the subject. "If it ain't broke, don't fix it," he'd say, like our sex life was a dishwasher or something. I tried to spice things up, bought lingerie he never noticed, suggested weekend getaways he said we couldn't afford, tried to initiate spontaneous intimacy only to be told he was too tired from work. Eventually, I stopped trying. The loneliness crept in slowly. Mike would come home, shower, eat dinner in front of the TV, then go to bed by 9:30. Weekends were for chores and meal prep. Yes, he meal prepped before it was trendy. Everything planned, scheduled, organized. No room for spontaneity or joy. "Let's go out tonight," I'd suggest on a Friday. "We have food at home," he'd reply. Why waste money? Everything was about saving money, being practical, planning for a future that sounded more like a prison sentence than a life. Mike wanted to buy a house in the suburbs, have 2.5 kids, retire at 65. The American dream that felt more like an American nightmare to me. I started going out with work friends just to feel alive. Mike never came. Crowds made him uncomfortable, he said. So I'd go to gallery openings, restaurant launches, industry parties alone. Well, not alone. Jake, Rick, and Tommy would often show up. They were Mike's friends from high school, but honestly, I saw them more than he did. Jake worked in insurance but really lived off his trust fund. Rick was a personal trainer with a body that belonged on magazine covers. Tommy was in sales, always had the best stories, the best connections. I need to explain about each of them, because Mike makes it sound like I just randomly started sleeping with his friends. It wasn't like that. Each relationship developed differently, met different needs Mike wasn't fulfilling. Jake was the emotional connection. He'd text me during the day just to check in. "How's your presentation going? Did you get that promotion? Want to grab coffee and vent?" Things Mike never asked, never cared about. Jake saw me as a professional, not just a wife. He'd introduce me to his business contacts, include me in conversations about market trends, treat me like I had a brain. The first time we kissed, we'd been at a networking event for his insurance company. I was helping him charm a potential client, using my marketing skills to help close a deal. Afterwards, he looked at me with such admiration. "You're incredible," he said. "I've never seen anyone work a room like that." When was the last time Mike had looked at me with admiration? When was the last time he'd even noticed my professional skills? Rick was pure physical attraction. Where Mike treated my body like a familiar piece of furniture, Rick worshipped it. He'd spend hours just touching me, exploring me, making me feel like a work of art instead of a household appliance. He taught me things about my own body I didn't know. Showed me pleasure could last longer than Mike's standard 10 minutes. "You're so tense," he said the first time he gave me a massage. "When's the last time someone really took care of you?" I couldn't answer because I'd started crying. Mike had never given me a massage, never spent time just making me feel good without expecting something in return. With Rick, I felt like a goddess. With Mike, I felt like a sex doll with a cooking function. Tommy was the intellectual connection. We'd talk for hours about books, movies, philosophy, all the things Mike called pretentious bullshit. Tommy made me laugh, made me think, made me remember I was more than just someone's wife. He'd send me articles about marketing trends, discuss my career goals, debate politics and culture. One night, after too much wine and a particularly passionate discussion about contemporary art, he kissed me. "I've wanted to do that since the first time I heard you destroy Jake's opinions about cryptocurrency," he said. "You're brilliant, you know that?" Mike had never called me brilliant. Smart, maybe, in that condescending way when I figured out how to fix the Wi-Fi. But never brilliant. The first time something happened, it was with Jake. We were at a bar after one of my work events. Mike had gone to bed hours earlier, uninterested in my career achievements. Jake was there, listening to me talk about my presentation, telling me how impressive I was. "Mike's lucky to have you," he said, buying another round. "He doesn't seem to think so," I replied, the alcohol making me honest. "Then he's an idiot," Jake said. And suddenly his hand was on my knee and I wasn't moving it away. We kissed in the parking lot. Just kissing, nothing more, but it awakened something in me I thought was dead. The feeling of being desired, wanted, chosen. I went home riddled with guilt, but also more alive than I'd felt in years. I told myself it was a one-time thing, a mistake. But Jake kept texting, kept showing up at my events, kept making me feel like the woman I used to be instead of the invisible wife I'd become. Within a month, we were sleeping together. The guilt ate at me, but not enough to stop. Because when I was with Jake, I felt beautiful. He'd spend hours just touching me, appreciating me, making me feel like a goddess instead of a household appliance. He'd take me to nice restaurants, buy me thoughtful gifts, plan actual dates. "When's the last time Mike took you somewhere nice?" Jake asked one afternoon in his apartment. I couldn't remember. Our last date had been to Applebee's with a coupon. Rick joined our arrangement a few months later. It sounds awful when I write it out, but at the time it felt natural. Jake brought him to one of our meetups, and the chemistry was instant. Rick was everything Mike wasn't. Passionate, spontaneous, physically affectionate. He made me feel sexy in a way Mike never had. Tommy came last, completing our strange quartet. He was the funny one, always making me laugh, always knowing exactly what to say to make me feel special. With him, it wasn't just physical. We'd talk for hours about books, movies, dreams, all the things Mike had no interest in. I know how it sounds. A woman sleeping with her husband's 3 best friends. But you have to understand the context. These weren't random men. These were people who knew me, who saw me struggling in my marriage, who offered me the attention and affection I was starving for at home. And they weren't taking advantage. If anything, I was the one in control. I decided when we met, where we went, what we did. For the first time in my marriage, I had power. I had choices. I had men who actually wanted to please me instead of just using me as a domestic servant. The night Mike found out, I'd been sloppy. Usually we met at hotels or one of their apartments. But Mike was working a double shift, and I was tired of sneaking around. So I invited them to our house. My house too, despite what Mike likes to claim. We were just hanging out at first. Drinking beer, talking, laughing. The kind of evening I used to dream Mike and I would have together. But as always with us, one thing led to another. The alcohol lowered inhibitions that were already pretty low. Soon we were in the living room, clothes coming off, inhibitions gone. I didn't hear Mike come in, didn't know he was home until weeks later when he revealed he'd been spying on us. At the time, I thought we'd gotten away with another evening of actually feeling alive. The boys left before dawn, and I cleaned up, went to bed, and prepared to face another day of marital emptiness. Mike claims he started documenting everything, planning his revenge like some kind of movie villain. But what he doesn't mention is how he never once tried to talk to me, never asked if I was happy, never noticed that his wife was dying inside their perfect little life. Instead, he spent weeks pretending everything was normal while secretly plotting my destruction. That's the man everyone thinks is such a hero. Someone who could share a bed with me, kiss me goodbye each morning, say I love you each night, all while planning to destroy me. When the confrontation finally came, it wasn't at home like Mike claims. He lured Jake, Rick, and Tommy to some boxing gym with threats. Then he came home and calmly told me he knew everything and was filing for divorce. No emotion, no anger, just cold calculation. "Is there anything you want to say?" he asked, like he was conducting a performance review. "I'm sorry," I said, because what else could I say? I never meant for it to happen. "You accidentally slept with my 3 best friends for 6 months?" His voice was still calm, controlled. That's what scared me most. I tried to explain about the loneliness, the neglect, the feeling of being invisible in my own marriage. But Mike didn't want to hear it. He'd already made up his mind. I was the villain. He was the victim. End of story. The divorce was brutal. Mike had been preparing for weeks while I was blindsided. He'd frozen our accounts, canceled credit cards, hired the best lawyer in Portland. I couldn't even afford proper representation. My parents were so ashamed they wouldn't help. My friends chose sides and most chose his. He took everything. The house, the savings, even things that were mine before we married. The judge was unsympathetic. Mike had painted me as some sex-crazed adulteress who'd betrayed a faithful husband. Nobody wanted to hear about the emotional neglect, the years of feeling invisible, the desperate need for human connection. The pregnancy was the final blow. When I found out, I prayed it was Mike's. We'd had sex a few times during that period, mechanical, scheduled, but still. Maybe there was a chance this baby could fix things, could make him see we belonged together. But Mike demanded a paternity test like I was some stranger instead of his wife of 4 years. When it came back negative, Tommy was the father. Mike looked at me with such disgust I wanted to die, and I tried to. Pills and vodka, the classic cry for help. Even that he turned into evidence of my instability. Poor Mike, dealing with his crazy ex-wife. Nobody asked why I was so desperate, why losing him felt like losing everything. Because despite what he thinks, I did love him. I just needed more than he was willing to give. Tommy disappeared when he found out about the baby. Jake and Rick followed soon after, terrified of Mike's threats and their own reputations. The men who'd promised to always be there for me vanished the moment things got difficult. So much for their love and devotion. I had Emma alone in a hospital room with just my mother there, and she spent the whole time crying about how I'd ruined her reputation. No partner, no support, just me and the consequences of seeking happiness in the wrong places. Mike writes about getting remarried, building a new family, finding peace. What he doesn't write about is how he destroyed 4 lives to get his revenge. Not just mine, but 3 men who'd been his friends since childhood. He could have divorced me quietly, let everyone move on. Instead, he had to prove a point. Now I work at a coffee shop, struggling to pay rent on a studio apartment while raising a daughter whose father wants nothing to do with her. Mike lives in our old house with his new wife and stepson, the family he always wanted but couldn't build with me because he was too busy being righteous to be human. The coffee shop job is humiliating. I have a marketing degree, 5 years of agency experience, and I'm serving lattes to people half my age. My manager is 23 and treats me like I'm stupid. "Sarah, you forgot to clean the steam wand again," she'll say in that condescending tone. I want to scream that I used to manage $1,000,000 campaigns, but who cares? I'm just another single mom who screwed up her life. Emma deserves better. She's beautiful and smart and deserves a father who loves her. Instead, she has Tommy's eyes and his absence. He sends child support, the court-mandated minimum, but has never met her, never held her, never asked for a picture. Jake and Rick disappeared too, terrified of being associated with the scandal. Some nights, after Emma's asleep in her crib, secondhand like everything in our lives, I sit on my futon and think about what Mike took from me. Not just the house and the money, but my future, my reputation, my ability to provide for my daughter. He writes about his new wife, Rebecca, like she's some saint, a kindergarten teacher who gardens and bakes cookies. Of course, that's who he'd choose. Someone wholesome and boring, someone who thinks meal prep is romantic, someone who doesn't need passion or excitement or intellectual stimulation, someone who won't challenge him or ask for more than he's willing to give. I've seen them at the farmer's market. She's pretty in that bland, suburban mom way. Always smiling, always holding his hand, always looking at him like he hung the moon. I wonder if she knows what he's capable of. I wonder if she knows that the man she thinks is so wonderful destroyed 4 lives without blinking. The therapy helps sometimes. Dr. Martinez listens without judging, helps me process the trauma. Yes, trauma. Because what Mike did was traumatic. The systematic destruction of my entire life, the public humiliation, the financial devastation, that's trauma, whether he wants to admit it or not. "You made choices," Dr. Martinez reminds me gently, "but the punishment far exceeded the crime." She's right. I cheated. I betrayed my husband's trust. I hurt him. But did I deserve to lose everything? Did I deserve to be driven to attempt suicide? Did I deserve to become a cautionary tale? The woman other wives point to and say, "At least I'm not like her"? He paints himself as some working-class hero who stood up to betrayal. But the truth is, he was a negligent husband who drove me into the arms of men who actually saw me as more than a roommate. Then he destroyed my life for daring to seek what he wouldn't give me. The worst part? Sometimes I drive by our old house and see his new wife in the garden, his stepson playing in the yard. The life that should have been mine if only Mike had been capable of seeing me, really seeing me, before it was too late. But he was too busy planning meal prep and checking our bank balance to notice his wife was dying inside. I park across the street sometimes, just watching. Rebecca planted roses where I wanted to put in a meditation garden. Mike built a treehouse for his stepson in the oak tree where I'd dreamed of hanging a swing for our future children. They have family barbecues on the patio we picked out together, using the grill we got as a wedding gift. That house holds all my dreams. The kitchen where I learned to cook Mike's favorite meals, trying so hard to be the perfect wife. The bedroom where I'd lie awake at night, wondering why my husband felt like a stranger. The living room where I finally felt alive in the arms of men who actually wanted me. Mike painted it like some den of sin, but for me, it was a sanctuary, the only place where I felt desired, appreciated, seen. Yes, it was wrong to bring them to our home, but it was my home too. the only space where I had any power, any control over my life. The pregnancy test was positive 2 weeks after Mike's dramatic boxing gym confrontation. I'd missed my period, but attributed it to stress. When those 2 lines appeared, I fell to my knees in the gas station bathroom where I'd bought the test. Please, I prayed to a God I'd stopped believing in, please let it be Mike's. We'd had sex exactly twice in the relevant time period, both times mechanical, scheduled, Mike going through the motions while probably thinking about his garbage routes. But there was a chance. A small chance this baby could fix everything. When I told Mike, he didn't even react, just nodded and said, "I want a paternity test." Like I was some random woman claiming he'd fathered her child, not his wife of 4 years. The coldness of it, the clinical detachment, broke something inside me that was already cracking. The test results arrived on a Tuesday. I remember because Mike was supposed to be at work, but he'd taken the day off to be there. When the technician read the results, probability of paternity 0%, Mike just nodded again. No emotion, no reaction, like he'd known all along. "Whose is it?" he asked, his voice flat. "I don't know," I admitted. And I didn't. Could have been any of them. The ultimate humiliation, not even knowing which of my lovers had fathered my child. That night, alone in my sister's spare room, I counted out the pills. 30 Xanax I'd been saving, plus a bottle of vodka. It wasn't a cry for help like Mike claims. It was a genuine attempt to escape the hell my life had become. The shame, the isolation, the prospect of raising a child alone while everyone judged me. Death seemed kinder. That's the real story. Not of a heroic husband wronged by an evil wife, but of a woman so starved for affection she made terrible choices, and a man so cold he'd rather destroy lives than admit his own failures. Mike got his revenge and his happy ending. I got loneliness and regret and a daughter who'll grow up without a father. But sure, Mike's the hero here. The good guy who won. Just ask him. He'll tell you all about it. The affair didn't happen overnight like Mike wants people to believe. It built slowly over months of accumulated neglect and loneliness. Every time Mike chose overtime over date night, every time he fell asleep during conversations about my day, every time he treated our marriage like a chore to check off his list, he pushed me further away. I remember the exact moment I knew our marriage was dying. It was our anniversary, our 3rd one. I'd made reservations at this beautiful restaurant downtown, bought a new dress, arranged for a romantic evening. Mike came home late from work, showered, and put on the same khakis he wore everywhere. "Ready for dinner?" I asked, excited about our special night. "Dinner? Oh, right, anniversary. Can we just order pizza? I'm exhausted." I stood there in my new dress, hair done, makeup perfect, and watched my husband collapse on the couch without even noticing the effort I'd made. That's when I knew he didn't see me anymore. I was just another fixture in his carefully organized life. The men Mike calls betrayers? They saw me. When Jake noticed I'd lost weight and complimented my new workout routine, that was more attention than Mike had paid to my appearance in years. When Rick brought me flowers just because he was thinking of me, it reminded me what romance felt like. When Tommy sent funny texts throughout the day, it made me remember that someone found me interesting. Mike wants everyone to think they were predators, taking advantage of his innocent wife. The truth is, they were the only people making me feel alive in a marriage that was slowly killing me. They didn't seduce me. I chose them because they offered what Mike wouldn't. Passion, attention, the feeling of being desired. The night parties Mike describes with such horror, they were the only times I felt like myself anymore. Not Mike's wife, not the woman who cooked his dinners and washed his uniforms, but Sarah. The woman who used to have dreams and desires and a personality beyond meal planning and cable bills. Yes, we drank. Yes, we had sex. Yes, I did things with them I wouldn't do with Mike. Because with them, I wanted to. With them, sex wasn't a scheduled obligation, but an actual expression of desire. They made me feel sexy, wanted, alive in ways Mike never could. Mike found out because he came home early one night without calling. If he'd communicated like a normal husband, none of this would have happened. But communication was never his strong suit. He'd rather spy and plot and plan his revenge than have one honest conversation about why his wife was seeking affection elsewhere. The boxing gym confrontation he describes? Classic Mike. Everything had to be dramatic, had to prove his masculinity. He threatened my lovers, acted like some tough guy, when the reality is he was a man who'd neglected his wife so thoroughly she'd found comfort with his 3 best friends. That's not strength, that's failure. And then the systematic destruction of my life. Freezing accounts so I couldn't buy groceries, canceling credit cards so I was stranded places, turning my family against me with carefully edited versions of the truth. He didn't just want a divorce, he wanted to annihilate me. My job loss wasn't some karmic justice like he implies. Mike sent screenshots of private messages to my boss, violating my privacy and destroying my career. I'd worked so hard to build something beyond being Mike's wife, and he took that too. Because in his mind, I deserved to lose everything for the crime of seeking happiness. The suicide attempt he mentions so casually? That was the darkest moment of my life. I'd lost my husband, my home, my job, my friends, my family's respect. I was pregnant and alone, abandoned by everyone who'd claimed to love me. The pills seemed like the only escape from the hell Mike had created, but even that became evidence of my instability rather than his cruelty. Poor stable Mike, dealing with his crazy ex-wife. Nobody questioned why a woman who'd had everything would try to end it all. Nobody wondered if maybe, just maybe, the punishment didn't fit the crime. I survived, obviously. Had my beautiful Emma, got a job at a coffee shop, started rebuilding from nothing. Mike calls it justice. I call it cruelty beyond measure. He could have divorced me cleanly, let us both move on. Instead, he had to win, had to prove he was the victim, had to destroy me completely. Now he has his perfect new family while I struggle every day. He found a woman who appreciates his meal prep and early bedtimes, who doesn't need passion or spontaneity or any of the things I craved. Good for them. I hope she never realizes what she's missing, never feels the loneliness that drove me to destruction. Because that's what Mike doesn't understand. I didn't cheat because I'm some horrible person. I cheated because I was drowning in a marriage that looked perfect from the outside but was killing me inside. I made terrible choices, yes, but I made them from a place of desperate loneliness that my husband was too blind to see. So that's my side. The cheater's perspective. The villain's truth. I don't expect sympathy or understanding. I know what I did was wrong. But I also know that Mike's version of events leaves out the years of neglect that led to that point. The emotional absence that drove me to seek comfort elsewhere. The cold calculation with which he destroyed not just me, but everyone involved. Mike got his revenge and his happy ending. I got survival and hard-won wisdom about the cost of seeking love in the wrong places. But at least I know the truth, that our marriage didn't end because I cheated. It ended because Mike never really saw me at all. The affairs were just the symptom. The disease was a husband who treated his wife like an appliance instead of a person. That's what really happened. Not the heroic tale Mike tells, but the sad story of 2 people who should never have married, and the destruction that followed when one of them finally admitted it. Mike can have his version. But now you know mine.